Hey everybody, it's me, Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie. On this episode of CD Junkie, I'm going to tell you the 10 albums that changed my life. Now, please don't pay attention to this darkness in the back. That's the darkness of my soul. Right now, let's focus on the positive. This is I believe it was started by Pete Pardo, and then Melinda Murphy did it, and then Mazzy did it, and I think other people have done this. And I decided, look, I'm a little channel. They're not going to notice me, but I wanted to do it. And I think a lot of you are probably already aware of this. I mean, the people who have been following my channel. But I kind of put these in chronological order, and I'll tell you a little bit about them. And I'm going to try to do this unedited. So, you're not going to see those jump edits and stuff. But let's start with the first thing. And like I said, this is by memory, and I'm going to go beginning with, of course, the Beatles 6. This is an album that I remember my brother and I used to borrow from my parents when we were little, 3, 4, 5 years old, something like that. This and Something New. And then, during Christmas time, instead of my parents getting us new copies of this, they would just wrap the version that we'd already been playing for weeks or years or months or whatever, and then they'd give it to us, but we didn't care because then it belonged to us, because my brother and I are very, very close in age. He's 11 months older than I am. So 1 month a year, we're the same age. So Beatles 6 and Something New are the ones that I really, really remember. And I remember putting the needle down and just taking in like 8 days a week, and it's just amazing. And then on Something New, it's, I think, Things We Said Today was, that was one of my favorite songs. And then I'll Be Back, is that off Something New? But yeah, that was one of the first things. One of the second things that really, really had a very, very strong effect on us. And it was a toss up between 4 albums, but I decided to go with one. And that is More the Monkees. But this one here had such an impact because it was also a visual thing. My parents knew that we loved the Beatles, so they introduced us to the Monkees, and they would put us down in front of the TV set, and they knew that for that week, this is during, when it was first airing. So I was 3, my brother was 4, and they knew that those 30 minutes was the only 30 minutes of the week that they didn't have to watch us. They could actually leave the house, maybe go on like a 30-minute vacation, or, God forbid, make My Little Sister. But More the Monkees, just so many memories related to this. But even back then when I was a kid, I didn't care for Auntie Griselda. Then the next record, I just made a video of this a few months ago. This is the first album that I ever owned, because every album and single that we had received, me and my brother were sharing it. And so the Beatles albums, the Monkees albums, Glenn Campbell, Neil Diamond, whatever, we were sharing it or we were borrowing it from my parents' collection. But the first album that was purchased for me, that was strictly my own, was the Sesame Street album. And, of course, I Love Trash and Apke Jackie Jucker Would Knock Her Stewart's is, things like that. And Being Green. This is the stuff that, formula. So, if you put the Beatles, the Monkees, and Sesame Street together, that sort of dictated the direction my taste was going to go. And, that's sort of the sunny side of life, the more joyful end of music. I obviously with these 3 bands, I wasn't going to get into Joy Division and any of the goth bands. But then, moving on, of course, we listened to the Osmonds and Jackson 5. Those were great albums, stuff like that. But an album that had a huge impact on me, actually a band that did, was when we got into Badfinger. And that was we really got fully into Badfinger in about 1977. We knew Badfinger growing up, but that's when we started buying our own Badfinger albums rather than just listening to them off the radio. And this album, Wish You Were Here, it took us a while to actually find this because, you couldn't find it in like cutout bins. You actually had to search around and find it in used stores, and not all the used stores had it in stock. Because this came out in 74, the end of 74, and by 77 it was deleted and long gone. And This is my favorite album of all time. This is Badfinger's Wish You Were Here. So much emotion on this album. In fact, I think a lot of this album was sort of little bits and pieces of songs thrown together, sort of like they did on Abbey Road when they just pieced a bunch of songs together on side 2. Wish You Were Here has many of those moments. In fact, there's Meanwhile Back at the Ranch, Should I Smoke? There's Some Other Time in the Meantime, Some Other Time. And I guess that's it. Oh, and then the song Dennis seems to have 3 distinctly different pieces, but it's such a powerful album. And the last album released during Pete Ham's lifetime. Excuse me. Then, I got into Queen. Of course, I was into, Warren Zevon and I had, Jackson Browne, Running on Empty, things like that. But one night, I'm waiting up to watch a new Queen video. And this is February, March of 1978. And I'm watching this video show. This is before MTV. And, it was like an hour long, and they were going to play a series of Queen videos plus their new video, which I think was probably Bicycle Race. And so I was waiting up for that, but they sort of had a bunch of these bands that they played beforehand. And it was The Clash, Kate Bush, and then this band here, The Jam. Now, this is not the Jam's most popular album, but it's their poppiest album. And this is the first album that I bought. This is the album that introduced me to new wave, punk, power pop, post-punk. This is the album that pointed the direction that says, you know what, stop listening to Top 40 and go in this direction. This is what you want to do. This is what you want to listen to. This was the key that opened up my world to most of the stuff that you see behind me, and the stuff that's over there, and the stuff that's over here, and stuff that's in the closet. And it's just, this was the band. This was the album that made me say, wow, bands that you don't hear on the radio write cracking tunes. And I just fell in love with this band. And that led to the next band, which is The Clash. This London Calling album, the first Clash album that I bought was Give 'Em Enough Rope. And then I bought the debut album when it was released in America. But this album is the album that opened my mind to that a band can do so much within the framework of one album. This is not one style of music. This is all of their influences combined on one 2-record album, and it is truly incredible. This album gets better and better every single time I hear it. And again, with the Jam exposing me to this whole new world of music, then the Clash exposing me to even more music within that new music. So you're taking the new music, the punk or the modern pop, whatever you want to call it, but then they're distilling bits of, reggae and country and blues and stuff like that. So then they're showcasing different styles in this album that you can actually explore yourself. So if you liked a certain thing they're doing there, you go, wow, what's the name of that style of music, or who influenced the Clash to do that? And then, you start going down the rockabilly trail, and then the, reggae trail, or, whatever you wanted to do. And it was such a mind-expanding album. Then another album released, I believe, that same year that opened my mind was The Last, L.A. Explosion. Why this album? Well, first off, it's great. It's a great indie album. They were a lot more garagey punk in the first couple singles, but this is a lot smoother, a lot poppier, a lot more melodic. There is a lot of punk edge on the album. But the songs, and it was very 60s influenced, and you heard bits of garage, you heard bits of psych, you heard all this kind of stuff, but they distilled it into a way that sounded uniquely like The Last. And the reason this was such a life-changing album for me was everything that I had been buying before was released in the U.S. on major labels. So, CBS or MCA or Warner Brothers, whatever. It was all major label stuff. This is the first album that I bought in the U.S. that was on a U.S. independent label. Now, I found out later that a lot of the stuff that I was buying in America was actually released on independent labels in the UK, released on a major label over here. I didn't know that at the time. I was 15, 16 years old. This album just, it opened my mind. It said, because up to this point, I was thinking that indie albums were those guys who were at swap meets and they played like 7 instruments at the same time and sold their own records. Now I know that those are called private press records, but in my mind, that's kind of what I thought indie was just an artist that was not good enough to sign to a major label. This opened my mind to just start buying indie. And that's why LA Explosion by The Last, that was 1979. And then another thing that exposed me not to the genre, but to just how great and how powerful a genre could be, is The Beat, which is also known as Paul Collins' Beat, and their debut album. I remember how this album smelled. The ink on the inner sleeve. I remember that just as much as the first time I heard this music, and I was like, holy crap, this is great. Every song is hook-filled, powerful, amazing. This is truly, in my opinion, a life-changing album. That also was 1979. Now, this next one, I'm trying to figure out which one of these albums would go in, my 10 most influential albums. I'm probably going to go with Argy Bargy. I had Cool for Cats, and I thought that was a great album. But this album was just worlds beyond that. It was just incredible. Pulling Muscles from Michelle, Another Nail in My Heart, Wrong Side of the Moon. Just these songs that I just remember hearing and getting chills, just going, oh my God, listen to that chord change, listen to that hook, those harmonies, just amazing. Now, I will say that East Side Story is my favorite Squeeze album, but Argy Bargy is the life-changing one that made me just say, bands now are capable of writing songs just as catchy as the Beatles. Now, here's the final album in my list here, and this is an album that people are probably going to go, that was life-changing. When you're, this was 81, so I was 18 years old. No, this is 82, 18, 19 years old, something like that. And, hanging out with, high school friends, and having crushes on every other girl I met, and just trying to find music that I felt was communal, that a lot of my friends could listen to and a lot of my friends would like, and that is going to be the first Flock of Seagulls album. This is a combination of synth pop and post-punk new wave. Really a charming, insightful, wonderful album that this was something that I was able to share with other people, because the band got played on the radio because of I Ran and Space Age Love Song, Telecommunication, Modern Love is Automatic. Those are the songs that got played on the radio on KROQ. But this is an album that I was able to share with people, and it sort of made me feel part of a community. That a lot of us were listening to the same music that really wasn't getting a lot of airplay at the time. I mean, MTV came around and started playing I Ran, but, I wasn't, I didn't have MTV at that time. So to me, it was what I listened to, and I made mixtapes for people, whether it was for a buddy or, for trying to charm a girl. It never worked. God forbid. This is probably the last time I felt part of a community, part of something bigger, because my music tastes tend to drift away from the norm. I mean, just, take a look at my channel. I'm not listening to the things that people expect me to listen to, or no, maybe they actually expect me to listen to weird stuff or unpopular stuff or stuff that's more obscure. But, there are bands that I do listen to that actually sold a couple million units or whatever. And Flock of Seagulls is a great album. So Flock of Seagulls, number 10, I guess you would say. Argy Bargy was number 9. Paul Collins' Beat was number 8. The Last was number 7. The Clash was number 6. The Jam was number 5. Badfinger was number 4. Sesame Street was number 3, the Monkees was number 2, and the Beatles was the first life-changing album. Thank you. I hope I didn't bore you too much, and I hope this sort of maybe, gives you an idea of why I listen to the stuff that I listen to. The stuff tends to be a little bit more upbeat, but oh man, my heart does break during a ballad. Oh, God, I can make a whole video about my 106 favorite ballads. I don't know why I came up with 106. Anyway, that is it. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe to ring that bell for future notifications. And until the next time, remember me. I'm Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie.